The American Renaissance is referencing a time period from 1800 to 1870. During this period, America undergoes enormous expansion of its physical makeup and great political turmoil with the beginning of the Civil War. But it is also a time that defined what it meant to be American and firmly established the American voice in literature. Just as the European Renaissance in the 1500s was a rebirth or celebration of its culture, an explosion of creativity in the arts and humanities, so too was the American Renaissance, in which writers, painters, and musicians created the stories, songs, and poems that would help to define the American ideal. It is during this time period that America begins to move away from its Revolutionary War roots and become an established world power. America expands physically during this time period with the Louisiana Purchase, almost doubling its size. There are also the technological advances in factories and industry, the coming of the railroad and telegraph systems that begin to move America away from a purely agricultural society. And the Monroe Doctrine establishes America as the central power in both North and South America. One of the primary ideals in literature during this time comes in the form of Romanticism. Romanticism championed the exploration of the private self as just as important as the exploration of the land. Writers described the individual quest for self-definition and elevated imagination over reason, feeling over fact, and nature above all. When thinking of the historical context, these ideals begin to make sense, as they sought to remove themselves from the strict, structured ideals of their Puritan English forefathers, and instead become a nation of explorers that valued the natural resources of such an abundant land. Romanticism emphasized the individual over the institution and the person over the community. Again, when thinking historically, these ideals make sense to us as we think of the rebellious spirit that the colonists must have had to overthrow their English aristocratic ancestors. American literature then champions the underdog, the hero who is able to go against the mainstream, who is able to rely on his own courage, bravery, and wit to seize the day. Heroes in American literature often fall into the small versus the mighty ideology, and many take on the story of David and Goliath, the seemingly unable to be defeated that is overthrown because of sheer force. Within Romanticism, there are two different faces. The first, bright and optimistic about the world around them and what the future has to hold. This will most closely be seen in Transcendentalism and the writings of Thoreau and Emerson, which will be studied later this year. In this unit, however, we begin to explore the dark side of Romanticism that is oftentimes shadowed by evil. The two primary authors that will be studied during this unit are Edgar Allan Poe and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Both are writers that deal with the ominous side of human emotions and believed that crime, cruelty, guilt, and self-destruction were the earmarks of human nature. Their stories examine tortured individuals ruled by the menacing shadows of their imaginations. To recap, the American Renaissance was a time where writers sought to define what it meant to be American. Romanticism focuses on imagination and emotion. It champions the individual, and it celebrates nature as wild and untamed. Romanticism can be bright and optimistic, or dark and ominous. Our major authors of the era are Washington Irving, the author of The Devil and Tom Walker; Nathaniel Hawthorne, author of The Minister's Black Veil; and Edgar Allan Poe, author of Cask of the Amontillado.